Welcome to the Friday night Inner Space talk. Our topic tonight is Open Yourself to Abundance. Do you feel there's never enough of anything? Not enough time, opportunities, resources? Well, if you've ever thought that, maybe not for long periods, but even for a moment, you're in the right place today. We've asked our speaker to explore with us what it means to remove abundant blocks that stop us feeling abundant, how to fully open ourselves up to abundance and open the door to possibilities, prosperity, and a sense of plenty. Our speaker is Linda Lee. Linda has been coordinating the Brahma Kumaris activities in Brighton for nearly 40 years. She also organises meditation events throughout Sussex. Linda, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Artie. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it's just a very, very beautiful topic. Abundance. And before I started on this spiritual journey, I was very much into astrology. I found astrology was one of the closest thing I had come to in terms of truth, in terms of understanding myself, in understanding relationships. And one of my favorite planets in astrology is Jupiter. And Jupiter is, to me, is the symbol of abundance, of having more than enough of everything. So when we look at abundance, I wanted to just look at in terms of what we want to be abundant of. Because there's there used to be lots of programs in creating sort of like mantras and vision boards and putting up pictures of what you wanted and really focusing on that and drawing that object, that relationship, that person towards you through a lot of thinking and meditating and whatever. And that might be something that you've actually gone through and you've actually acquired something through that method. But when I'm talking about abundance, I'm talking about really what's in your heart, because I feel this is where we're at in terms of global society. Is we're being forced to look at what's in our heart. And as I was sharing with Archie, we don't actually ever get taught to do that. We cover up our heart probably from the first time we have a relationship with someone who breaks our heart, who lets us down, who doesn't fulfill our needs and desires. So I think we from then on, I think our heart starts to close. When we were talking about children, and I was talking about grandchildren, when I look at my granddaughter, when I look at her, she operates only from her heart. She doesn't have the ability to logically think things through in terms of, should I say this, should I do that? She just completely works from her heart. And that's something that I think all of us adults really are drawn to, in fact, in relation to children, because whenever a child, like my grandchildren came to the Lighthouse Retreat Centre in Worthing, and there were quite a lot of people there. And she was, everybody wanted to see her, everybody wanted to talk to her, everybody wanted to watch her and listen to, I mean, of course, she loved it. She likes, all children like to perform and they like to be centre of attention. But, she wasn't coming from that space that I want to be centre of attention And everybody was really attracted by the innocence. And of course, she's in a very small little body, and that's also very attractive, and that sense of purity. But she operates just totally from her heart. But as we go through life, we kind of lose that sort of sense of innocence, that sense of simplicity. And we, when we go through our sort of, I don't know, when it starts, maybe when we get to about 10 or something like that, 11, 12, our ego starts to develop, and the sense of, I know there's a sense of I-ness when we are smaller, but this sense of inferiority, comparison, you know, these kind of qualities emerge as we're going through our teens, and there's a bit of insecurity of not knowing really who you are, because you're identifying quite obviously with form, because that's the only thing you can identify with. You're not taught anything else other than you are what you see in the mirror. And so then you know, this builds up a completely wrong picture. And I feel that this, all of these qualities of simplicity and generosity and sweetness and kindness and innocence, and they're all connected with the heart. They're all connected with love. They are all actually love in action. So abundance, you know, when I wanted to start my sharing really with when I first started on this spiritual journey, and I was the only mother that was around in those early days. And because you're a mother, you're presumed that you know how to cook. Well, I didn't know how to cook, and I liked cooking. And so I got the job to cook. And I had never really cooked for more than 6 people in my whole life. 6 people, maybe 8. And then I was presented with, you know, you're preparing a meal for 30 people, 40 people. And I had absolutely no idea what proportions to use, or how I knew how to cook it, but I didn't know what proportions. And I remember the very first meal I cooked, I can't remember what it was, but I know it had mushrooms in it. And I had bought, I think it was, anyway, I can't remember the number. It wasn't huge, but it was more than 6. And I had bought 4 boxes, big boxes of mushrooms. You know, they come in those little baskets. I bought 4 of these. And I remember somebody saying to me, you know, how many people are you cooking for? And you know, I had no idea. And then somebody else came into the kitchen much later when I was cooking, and they said, oh, you must have done this hundreds of times. And I thought, it's amazing, isn't it? I'd never done it before, but because my heart was in it, and because I wanted to do it, and I wanted everybody to have enough, then I had actually purchased far too much. And I don't know how long we ate the mushrooms for, but anyway. And I remember the second time, just while I was on a cooking spree, just because it's quite funny, I had to cook for, I think 120 people were coming to a conference. And and it was only a 1-day conference, and I was only cooking lunch. And I thought, well, I'll cook something Indian because Daddy Janky was coming, and I thought I'll cook something Indian. I don't know anything about spices and how to mix them. But anyway, my heart was in it. I wanted to cook it from my heart. And anyway, I went to the store to buy beans. And anyway, I soaked these beans. I soaked them for 4 days, 4 days before I cooked them. And they were in buckets like you get for, they're like oil drums. There must have been, I don't know how many liters of oil, great big. And I had 4 of them. And when somebody came down from London, she was coming to help me. She couldn't believe that I'd first of all been soaking them for 4 days. They were all fermenting on the top. Well, it was all fermenting, the water. And she couldn't believe how many beans that I prepared just for. So, you know, and then I started to think, well, why did I do that? And it actually is because I wanted everybody to have enough. And because I didn't know how the proportions, I didn't know proportions. So I just went for the biggest number rather than not have enough. And the third cooking scenario I wanted to share with you is that this was quite a long time afterwards, and I was quite comfortable about cooking for numbers, that sort of numbers. And I was asked to cook something for, we had inaugurating Global Cooperation House in London. And they were all the guests, which were quite a lot of our senior teachers, were coming down south to us, to the seaside, for a day out, and they asked us to prepare lunch, and which we did. And that was supposed to be, I don't know how many was supposed to be, say it was about 80 people were supposed to come, and actually 160 people came. And I wasn't in the kitchen where I'd cooked it. We cooked the food and we had to take it to the venue, and there was no way that any more food could be cooked. And that again, whatever the quantities that I cooked, because there was always more than enough, but there wasn't actually, I hadn't doubled the amount, but that program, I got to eat one quarter of a nectarine. That's all that was left for me to eat, and I was so happy and so happy, that we had fed everybody, and they didn't have a huge plate full, and they didn't probably didn't feel like really full up after they'd eaten it, but there was enough to go around everybody. And that taught me trust, that you take on a situation and you share from your heart, and you just trust. And it felt like Jesus's story with the 5 loaves and 3 fishes, or the 5 fishes and 3 loaves, that story, that that's all he had, and yet fed everybody. And that reminded me of that. So I think abundance is a kind of connected with an attitude of and a consciousness of just wanting enough for everybody. I have somebody who I was speaking to the other day, and they were saying that they never feel like they have enough money. They never feel like they have enough money. And so they were saying to me that, I can't actually give much because I don't feel I have enough. And I thought that was quite an interesting concept, because I never have a lot of money. I've never had a lot of money. I didn't go in for a career. I became a mother quite young, and I didn't work for the first 4 or 5 years until he went to school. So I've never been somebody that's had huge amounts, but I've always had enough. And so because this topic comes up, you start to think, well, how did I always have enough? And one of the things that I think has always been a part of my nature is simplicity, that I live quite a simple life. And I was born in a time where if you can't afford something, you don't have it. So that was still quite part of the attitude towards life, that you didn't kind of buy things that there wasn't any way of having credit. So if you didn't have enough money, you couldn't have it. The only thing that you could have is a house. I think you could buy that on a mortgage, but otherwise you saved up for it. And I think there's something in that, to actually save up and for something that you want, and then actually purchase it. And then you have a lot more value for that which you've spent time and energy earning to acquire. Whereas now, I mean, I'm also one of the people that live in this generation that you can go shopping and you can buy £100 worth of food, and then you pay for it about 4 weeks later. So we live in that kind of world now, where our attitude towards things is that I can have them now, but pay for them later. And I think this actually very subtly does something to our heart. It enables our heart to shrink, or it makes our heart shrink. And then we have expectations that, you know, why haven't I got this, and why haven't I got that? I mean, when I was a mother, and then I split up from the person that I lived with, then I was a single parent, so then I had to rely on the state for some time to support me. And you know, I didn't run a car, I didn't smoke any cigarettes, I didn't go drinking alcohol, those kind of things I didn't have enough money for. So I didn't get into debt with that. So I think something about simplicity has a deep connection with abundance, that when we live a very simple lifestyle, then there's always enough. And I felt that even through lockdown, because I like to walk, but I also like to travel places to go for walks. And like everyone, we haven't traveled. And so I found that, you know, the pennies have accumulated in the bank more than I suppose I must have spent that money on flights, but it seems like an abundance. I've got an abundance of money in the bank, which I never had before. So, and then you think, well, what to do with that abundance of money? You know, how can you use it to make life worthwhile? And then that's my story. And this other person who's in a kind of similar situation is always never got enough. And I think, well, what is the difference between the two of us is that I always think that there's more than enough, or there is enough, and this other person has a completely different attitude. So it must be the way that we live our lives, because I live very simply, and I think that that's very helpful. So yeah, I think abundance is connected with many virtues, actually. Generosity is another quality which I feel that's also, I mean, it's an expression of love, generosity. And in the early days, you know, when I wanted to be more of a spiritual person in this organization, that my service field was cooking. And so, you know, that opened the door to this particular virtue, which must have been there in the first place. They don't grow on trees. So, but when you get to use a particular virtue, then you start to see it growing. And the more that you see it growing, then the more you trust it. And the more you start to trust it, the more you start to believe. And then you start to see how much energy and power it actually has. So, you know, it's a kind of journey that you have to share it first in order to notice it. And then when you've noticed it, and this is the thing, other people say these things to you, and then you, like I was sharing with Artie, you know, people used to say that I was very light. You're always very light. And I used to wonder, well, what do they mean by that? What does that mean? What are they seeing that they can make such a statement about me? Because inside me was a different me to what people were seeing. So I started to look at it. How was I demonstrating lightness? And so I'm sharing this because this was part of the journey. So opening yourself to abundance, which is the topic, first of all, it's connected with your heart, but we don't know what's in our heart till we start or we have an opportunity to share it. And that was my fortune. I had an opportunity to share it, first of all, through cooking. I mean, I was just a cook. That wasn't, it's not like you were anything but without a cook, you know. I mean, you get lots of blessings being a cook because people love to eat. So, but when you start to do cooking from your heart, or you start to do anything that you really like doing and you do it from your heart, that opens the door to lots of other specialities, virtues, qualities that maybe you hadn't seen before. So I feel that, I mean, I don't know if this is something that, you know, everybody goes through, but I had not experienced any of those things until I got to, until I came across the Brahma Kumaris. And so, you know, that those doors of opportunity have never stopped opening. And so, you know, from one thing to another thing, you start to see that generosity is shown in many ways, not just through food. It's showed through time. It's showed through in your relationships. You're generous with your time. You're generous with your patience. You're generous with your kindness. You're generous with your honesty. You know, it's like it goes on and on and on. They're all so interrelated and so connected. So if you get opportunities to do something that's for others, not just for yourself, I think that's the key for it, isn't it? So I think that's also very much connected with a mother, because mothers, again, when you become a mother, you don't actually go to school to learn how to be a mother. You have a child, and then you have to learn how to be a mother or a father, for that matter. I've never been a father, I've only been a mother, but you learn it on the job. And so what I learned when I was a mother was that, I'm still a mother, of course, but when I was a mother, acting as a mother, is that the child comes first. And so whether you're tired, you're hungry, you're exhausted, whether you're fed up, whatever, that the child comes first. And so you have to give something. And if you don't give something at the time when it's needed, then you end up with so many more complications that, so this again comes from the heart. So if you don't have something in your heart to share, then it doesn't work. So abundance is about looking inside, and I shared that with Archie there, that you know, every opportunity that you get to be able to go inside yourself and just be with yourself and experience yourself as you really are, without all the ego, without all the chatter, without, just to go into that place of stillness and just appreciate how beautiful it is to be in that space of stillness. This helps to reinforce your faith, your trust, because it's based on experience, not just on theory. So we start off with theory, and we start off with hoping that the theory is right. But as we practice, we meditate, we connect with ourselves. When we connect with ourselves, we already open up to a higher sense of light, of power, of love. And we allow that love to again go into the soul, I mean, I keep pointing to my heart, but actually I don't really mean my physical heart. I mean the heart of the soul, the center of the soul. And just allowing that which is in the center to emerge and come to the surface. And sometimes things come to the surface which are not quite so beautiful, but they come to the surface for you to say Om Shanti and farewell. and to let go of. And then when you do that, then it's like there's more space inside you for more of this to emerge. So abundance, I just love that picture, because I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but just being out in that, not to see a house or a person and just like, wow, you know, this is it. There's just nothing but me and space. I'm out in nature, which is just being who it is, with no pretense, no ego, no arrogance, just being. And that really makes you feel incredibly alive. So I feel that to open yourself to abundance, because I don't know quite what it feels like to be closed to abundance. I can't think of a time when I've really from my heart not wanted to give anything. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Maybe there is some, but maybe I've deleted it along the way. But you know, there's this wealth of beauty that's inside that needs to be connected with in order for it to emerge to the surface so that I can see it and others can experience it. So it is in there, but stillness, you have to go into that space of stillness, I feel. You can't do it theoretically. It has to be through experience. I feel anyway. I mean, I don't spend an awful lot of time thinking, because in fact, I spent a lot more time practicing not thinking than, or being in a state of not thinking, or not thinking too much, rather than thinking my way through life. And that again opens a door to spontaneity. And I think that's also connected with the lady that's got her arms out and is spontaneous, that what you're feeling deep within is actually mirrored in what you're seeing outside of yourself when you have a scene like that of just nothing but beauty and stillness. This is what nature provides, isn't it? Stillness and beauty and space. And that's all a reflection of ourselves as a spiritual being. And then when we forget that, we look in the mirror and we don't like this and we don't like that, and this is no good, and I haven't got this and I haven't got that. You know, it just absolutely zaps their energy. And maybe this is why people, you know, try to turn to recreational things like alcohol or drugs or something to try and go beyond that. Whereas meditation and understanding that you're a spiritual being, you're eternal and immortal, and that you've been here many times and played many parts, and here you are where you are, you know, with all this beauty inside that is never had an opportunity through any kind of education to be released. And so I feel incredibly grateful, and I'm very, very appreciative of, I've learned that as well. It's been reinforced in the last sort of 7 weeks while I've been nurturing my broken leg, that, you know, how fortunate I've been to be able to just have, well, I have not lacked for anything. It's just been amazing. I've had everything around me that's been of use. And I feel that's also quite connected with this thing of abundance, that in a time of need, things come back to you. And I've certainly felt that. I've been looked after, I've been cared for, physically, spiritually, and mentally. And so that must be because something has happened to get the return of that. And even when I had an operation on this leg, which I broke because I fell down the stairs, you know, even the surgeon and the whole operating team, the anaesthetist, it was just such a happy event. It was just really such a joyful experience. They were quite surprised themselves how happy I was. So, you know, that's what does happen? Where's happiness come from? This is connected with abundance. And I felt so happy going down to theatre to the operation that, you know, everybody that I met was also feeling happy. And so it was just quite an amazing experience. And, you know, what made that happen? So I try not to question too much, as to try and analyze that. But it was just an amazing event that I felt afterwards that would be, you know, I would no problems going through that again. That was just really quite easy, and it all feels quite surreal, the whole series of things. So it stopped me doing one thing, but it's enabled me to look at and do other things. And one of the things that it showed me is that there are multiple ways to do the same thing, and that when you can achieve one little thing that you thought you couldn't do, how much joy that brings. And that's kind of reminded me of my granddaughter, who says, "Look at me, Grandma, because like I can do a cartwheel, or I can, you know, run up a hill or something like that, which I didn't think I could do." And that's kind of what it's brought to me, this kind of childlike simplicity. And yeah, now I think we're here to enjoy life now, not to take from life, but to give something back. When I go for a walk, when I go out in that nature, I like to walk in nature in that stillness, so that energy that I am connecting myself with is touching all the trees and the birds and all the worms and everything of nature, all the creatures that are out there. And that's really all they want. It's because of our violence and our greed and our grumpiness and all of these things that nature is like responding in the way that it is. So yeah, I think it's a most beautiful topic to be abundant and to have that sense of not lacking anything. So I feel greatly, greatly fortunate for all of those things that have happened. So I will just come back to kind of just reiterate that all of this is connected with the heart. And maybe just a last little story I wanted to share with you, because one of my dear friends departed from his physical body a few weeks ago, actually. And I had broken my leg, and I was in hospital, and I couldn't go to see this friend, and they were obviously they had cancer, and they were deteriorating physically, and I really wanted to go. And anyway, he was still there when I came out of hospital, and I had a wheelchair, and I persuaded somebody that was going to see him to take me, and that's the last time that I saw them in their physical body. But it was the most moving. It was the most moving experience, and it actually made me cry, because this person was very outgoing and always a laugh and always fun, and this highlight of the party, always had jokes, and very clever, very confident, very lots of beautiful qualities, very lovely qualities. But at the end of the day, when it came to his time to move on, all it was about was love. All it was about was love. And all it was about was just holding hands and just exchanging that love from the heart, you know, between two. And we did that. I was in my wheelchair, and sort of a bit lower than his bed, actually. You could only just see over the top. And we held hands, and just, he looked at me and I looked at him, and he could hardly speak. And I thought, actually, at the end of the day, we live our life and we live it to the fullness, and we're all given our own freedom of choice of how we live our life. But at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. It just comes back to love. And so I find that abundance being connected with the heart, and for me to increase abundance means to live life very simply, very respectfully, in terms of other people, of course, but in terms of the environment and the place and the space that I occupy on this journey. So my three virtues that I would say support abundance are generosity, simplicity, and trust. And maybe they go the other way around. Maybe they go simplicity, generosity, and then trust. And if we can live life with these, activating these qualities, then I feel that we'll always be in a state of abundance. So I shall pause there, and maybe we just have a meditation now. And so, because meditation is always one thing is theory, but the other is experience. So let's just take our thoughts within and connect with. We have to go inside the mind, and we have to stay there inside that mind. We don't need to talk to the mind. We just need to appreciate the stillness that's behind the mind. And if I can get past this minefield of thoughts, and go deeper into this most beautiful space of stillness, where there's no fear, there's no anxiety, there's never any not enough. Place of fullness and abundance. What's inside is an endless space of stillness. And I need to connect with this stillness on a daily basis. It puts me back on track. It puts me in the right frame of mind. It irons out all my attitudes, my intentions, my feelings, and brings me back to oneness, a sense of oneness with myself, and a sense of connection with everything that's natural. A connection with my heart. We store many things in our heart. And it's time now to allow them to be released and to let go. And come back to this space of truth, reality, peace, kindness, sweetness, sincerity. All these lovely words sitting in our heart as feelings. And when we share those feelings, we connect with our eternal and immortal self, which is one of abundance. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Linda. That was really beautiful. Let me start with the questions that have come in so far. The first question is, hi, Linda. I'm in my late 40s and feel that I don't have enough in life. I have a one-bed flat and feel I should be further along in my life, like most people my age are. Friends are married with children and big houses. I feel inadequate and middle-aged. Thanks for your talk.
Mm-hmm.
Any suggestions? Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I used to feel like that in comparison and looking that, you know, at others and thinking that's the kind of norm we're presented with. But that's, you know, people might have houses and children and relationships, but do they have happiness? Do they have peace? I think that they don't, actually. So I think if you start to, I mean, I just can't think of another answer other than meditating and understanding who you really are as a spiritual being. You know, you tap in, this is an abundance that's inside. And everybody, you know, people have everything. There's lots of people on the planet now that, not lots, like there's more people that have not, but there are more people that have billions and billions and billions, and yet they don't have happiness, they don't have peace, they don't have love, they don't have authenticity, they don't have real friends and connections. So this is all, when we start to connect inside, I feel that that's what brings truth. And so, yeah, I can sit there and compare myself with others and they have all this and I don't. But I would suggest you take up, do the Raj Yoga course and you know, expose yourself to some really good quality meditation. If you're in London, go to Global Corporation House or Inner Space Covent Garden. Yeah, that's what I would do.
Thank you. The next question is, how do I release and let go of the things that are stuck in the heart? How did you go about doing it?
I would suggest, because on my hindsight, I would suggest you don't worry about what's stuck in your heart. I would suggest you just keep going into that space of stillness and allowing love itself to come into your heart, and these things will just they will dissolve. I wouldn't focus on how to release something. I would focus on drawing more peace, drawing more love, drawing more happiness through meditation. I would do that. I would go into that space of being a soul when you're in that space of stillness, you're automatically connected with the Supreme, and I would let that energy do its work. It's the quickest way round that I've found. You can spend all day long trying to get things out of your heart, but if you let that pure energy from the Supreme into your heart, then the magic starts to happen, and it's just like was never there in the first place. It just dissolves. It's quite easy to do it that way around. But the first thing is you have to connect with yourself. You have to go into that space of stillness inside, and then magic starts to happen. Really, that's my experience anyway.
Thank you. Linda, we talked about your leg and how you broke it and how you went through that whole process. But the question is, if you'd broken your leg and it wasn't mended in a way that you could walk, would you feel differently now?
Well, and that's a sort of, I'd have to give you a theoretical answer, because that's not the case. But I feel it's to do with attitude. I met a lady just a few weeks ago, and she had a hip operation, and it hadn't gone according to plan, and she was quite cross about it, which is understandable. But if you spend the rest of your life being cross about something that has already happened and you can do nothing about it, or maybe you can do something about it, but if you're cross about it, sometimes you don't do anything about it, then I think it's connected with attitude. So if I couldn't, I mean, I had this thought that I will walk on this leg. So I could sit down and say, well, I'll wait for it to heal and then I'll get and do something. But actually, right from day one, I've been doing exercises, and I've been massaging it with oil, my leg, with some arnica oil, and talking to my leg. And even when I went down to the theatre, one of the doctors came round with a black flip chart marker, and he put an arrow on my leg just, and I to make sure that they operated on the right leg. And I said, give me that pen, and I drew a heart on my kneecap. And he said, why have you done that? And I said, so that when the doctor operates, they know that I love my knee and I love my leg. And so, you know, when the surgeon came round and they looked at it and saw that heart, I said, when you operate on this leg, you remember how much I love it. And that did make a difference, you know, it made a difference. And when she came round the next day, one of the doctors, she said, oh, I might have, we might have washed the heart off, she said, because we had to put some iodine or something on your leg. But, you know, she was then not operating on a leg, she was operating on a leg that was connected with a person. And so I think, you know, this whole thing is about attitude. And had it gone wrong, well, then what could I have done about it? Maybe I can do something to put it right, or maybe I can't. But to be bitter about it, to be angry about it, you know, I might be initially, but I've got to get over that. Otherwise, it's going to eat me. And then that makes you feel hard, and it's not conducive for a good heart. So yeah, my fortune is that it's not, I'm not walking on both of them properly yet, but I will. And that's determination too.
That's really lovely. I love the idea of drawing a heart on your knee and making it clear how much you love it. It's not just determination with force, it's determination with love. That's really, gosh, that's an eye-opener, because we get determined, but then we can get a bit narrow in our thinking or focus. But here you've just opened up completely. That's lovely. Thank you. Next question. There's a saying that there is enough in the world for everyone's needs, but not for every person's greed. what can we change? What can we do to change this dynamic? It seems that we've gone too far to turn back and to be selfless and sharing with what we have.
Mm. Yeah, it does feel like that. It can feel like that. Yeah, I mean, because we're so, it's so out of balance with that. There's so much more need in the world that if you keep giving, you'll run out. Basically, if you share all the food you've got in your cupboard and you've got to keep replenishing it, haven't you? Otherwise, you're going to be empty. And I feel that's why, this is where spirituality comes in, and this is where meditation comes in, especially, that we have to fill up every day. We have to fill up and fulfill our own needs before we can fulfill others. And one of the examples I heard many, many, many years ago was the example when we're on an aeroplane and they do the demonstration of what happens if the cabin pressure drops down. First of all, you put the mask on yourself, and then you put the mask on other people or the children. And that's such a good example, because if I cut the oxygen off to myself, then I actually can't help others. So in order to be able to share, we have to find a way to keep our own resources, our own inner resources. And when I'm talking about abundance, I hope that you got the message that it isn't actually lots of money and big houses and lots of cars. It's actually the inner abundance. And I felt that was what helped in this operation, because it could have gone wrong. And I was so in the early morning hours of that operation, I was using my mind to make sure that the operating theatre was filled with light and peace. And all the people that I was connected with this operation, I said, have you had a good breakfast? Have you had a nice night's sleep? How are you feeling? You're not upset or worried. You're all feeling quite content. And everyone I asked these questions, because I wanted them to feel in a good, positive state of mind. So, we have enough on this planet to fit it. In fact, in terms of food, we've got enough. They say that we've got enough to feed 12 billion people, and we've got 8. So some people somewhere are not allowing that to happen. But if we don't work on ourselves, this is why I think abundance is so amazing, that if you connect with that which is within yourself, and you fill up to a certain degree, I don't think you have to be 100% full, but I think you have to be a certain percentage, that you're always full to that certain percentage, and you keep on topping up a little bit more each day. Then whoever you come into connection with, you've got something to share with them. And who knows where they take that attitude, or that vibration, or that smile, or that kind word, where that will take them on their journey to go within and start to connect with their abundance. And I think that's where we're coming from. We have a statement that says, when I change, the world changes. And I think this is very true. We're not trying to change the world first, we're trying to change the self first. And when we do that, it has phenomenal effects. And we're seeing it. There's a lot of people in the world that are in darkness. There's a lot of people in confusion, but there's a lot more people that are connecting with light now, and seeing light and appreciating light and feeling light. Lots more people. So where's all that coming from? It's people that are willing to look a bit deeper inside themselves and connect with something that's a bit more real than, a nice car and a house and a job. And it's good to have those things, but if we're not happy inside, then what's the point, really? I hope that answers the question.
The next question is pretty much like the previous one, but maybe you have something to add as a skill or a tool. And the question is how to increase our levels of generosity in relationships and life in general.
In terms of relationships, well, I feel that the first relationship it comes back to the self. If I can't have a good relationship with myself, then it's very difficult to have good relationships with other people, because I come from a place of neediness. And that's what I was meaning, that, you know, when I was younger, I thought I was ugly, I wasn't loved, I thought all these things about myself. But it was nothing to do with the outside. It was how I was within myself. And because of that, that vibration, that energy, that attitude used to push people away. Because if somebody, I haven't filmed it, but I'm sure that if somebody wanted to love me and I didn't feel worthy of being loved, then that energy would go out and push them away. So I think that the first relationship's got to be with the self. I know that when I feel I'm really in touch with myself, which is quite a lot of the time now, and I feel quite comfortable within myself, then people they behave much more differently with me. They're much more open and also sharing. So I feel that it starts with this connection with oneself. If I can get myself right, then and I don't know any therapy other than the Brahma Kumaris or the Raj Yoga meditation. I don't know any other therapy that can do that. So I would start with, you know, getting to like yourself, getting to love yourself in a true way, not in an ego way, but to love yourself. And then people will automatically love you. Your relationships will always be easy.
Linda, wow, thank you. Gosh, what a lovely evening. You've kind of broken it down and made it so accessible. I love this idea of simplicity alongside trust for abundance. I hadn't really thought of it that way. And I can see how that really does help. And when you have that trust in your heart, then you don't need fear. And we've had a couple of years of fear quite intensely. So what a lovely way of coming out of it. Thank you. Thank you for making the time and sharing with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Auntie.